Hello, everybody. Greeting. What's going on? May peace and power be to all you beautiful people. This your girl Tiffany come through here live in effect. So today I feel a little bit better. However, I'm still battling with this sinus. Can't stand it. But I feel a little bit better though than I did yesterday. Anyways, so today's topic is going to be about Philip A. Payton Jr., who was a Harlem real estate entrepreneur, and he was also considered as father of Harlem because he rented out many properties to African Americans. So today, this is his born day. He was born on the 27th of February, and of course, he passed on August of 1917. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present some information. I tried to find as much as I could on this man, and after that, we're gonna go from there. So I want to say shout out to everybody that's been subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you for supporting the channel, sharing the contents and all that great stuff. So let's keep it going. Hopefully this channel will grow, and hopefully I can get more subscribers. But as of right now, I am very happy with where I'm at. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching. I appreciate that. So it really means a lot to me. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started with Philip A. Payton Jr. Who is he? All right, so Philip A. Payton Jr. was born on February 27, 1876, and he passed on August 1917. He was an African American real estate entrepreneur known as the father of Harlem due to his work renting properties in Harlem, New York City to African Americans. So he was born in Westfield, Massachusetts on February the 27th, 1876. He was the second of four children, one girl and three boys. His father was a barber and his mother a hairdresser. His father insisted that the children learn a trade and so trained him in the family profession twice a week after school. Payton claimed to be a full-fledged barber by the age of 15. So his parents instilled the concept of entrepreneurship to him. So he was already becoming a barber at the age of 15. So that's where he got his gig at because his father owned a barbershop. His mother was a hairdresser. But let's continue. All right. So Dr. Joseph Charles Price, founder of Livingstone College in Salisbury, North Carolina, was a personal friend of Payton's father. And Payton attended the institution and graduated from the institute in 1899. The effects of an injury persisted for most of the following year. His siblings each had a more completed education. His sister graduated from the state normal school, later Westfield State College, and both of his brothers attended Yale University. All right. Payton worked in the family barbershop until 1899 when he decided to make more of himself and left for New York City against the wishes of both parents. There he worked as a department store pitcher and weighing machine attendants at $6 per week and a barber at $5 to $6 per week. And finally, as a porter in a real estate office at $8 per week. While working as a porter, he got the idea of going into the real estate business on his own. All right, so He made all this hustle. He made his move to New York City. Okay. He worked as a porter. He worked for the real estate company. And he still was doing barber on the side. So he was juggling with 3 jobs, trying to make ends meet. Then eventually he decided that he wanted to do entrepreneurship, get into the real estate. Now, real estate business is very popular when it comes to African Americans, right? Especially in the South, in Atlanta. Real estate business is booming. So you're more than likely going to make a substantial income getting into the real estate business if you are an entrepreneur, because the housing market is always going up and there's always people looking for homes. And of course, you can buy a property that's cheap and then renovate the property and sell it for a better price. So the real estate business is always a good profession for many of those who want to really get into those entrepreneurship, because they can make better income. Now, I can't say that it's easy to get into real estate, but I will say that a lot of people have property and benefit off the business. All right, but let's go ahead and continue. Okay, so real estate. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, there were many African Americans migrating up north from the American South due to disenfranchisement and the Jim Crow laws. White supremacists formed hate groups and cast crimes upon many African American families during that time. Also, these were still times that Black people worked as low-paid sharecroppers. All of these factored into the mass northward movement of Black people during this time. Many of those chose to move into New York neighborhood of Harlem, which resulted in the social movement known as the Harlem Renaissance. Payton first got into real estate business as a janitor, but after seeing how the business operated, he decided he wanted to create his own firm. Payton and a partner opened the Brown and Payton real estate firm in October of 1900. In June of 1901, Payton married. The business was unsuccessful and Brown left in the spring of 1901. Payton continued the business alone while his wife sued to support them. The long point in April and May of 1901, the Payton's cat and dog died, partly due to hunger, and the Paytons were evicted from an apartment house he had been managing for being unable to pay their rent. Soon after this, though business improved, Payton got charge of more houses and began to deal in real estate for himself as well for others, until he was making profits of thousands of dollars per month. It says, I knew that if I made one good sale, I could make enough to keep me going for a year. I came so near making a good sale so many times that I knew I was bound to hit it before long. Philip A. Payton Jr. quoted in The Negro in Business. Source differs on what was Payton's first break. Several sites an interview in 1911 or 1912 with the New York Age, in which Payton recalled, I was a real estate agent making a specialty in management of colored tenements property for nearly a year before I actually succeeded in getting a colored tenement to manage. My first opportunity came as a result of a dispute between two landlords in West 134th Street. To get even, one of them turned his house over to me to fill with colored tenants. I was successful in renting and managing this house. After a time, I was able to induce other landlords to give me their houses to manage. The New York Times state that by 1900, Payton was already managing several buildings housing African Americans. Yet other sources write that Payton's first success came when he approached the manager of an apartment house on West 133rd Street, which tenants were fleeing because a murder had been committed there, and persuaded him to have the chance to fill it with black families. All right. Give me a second, you guys. All right, I'm back. So sorry about that. All right, so now I'm gonna go down to where it says the Afro American Realty Company. So on June the 15th, 1904, with the help of other affluent blacks, Payton chartered the Afro American Realty Company, issuing $50,000 share at $10 each. Payton's business partner was a mortician named James C. Thomas. Along with Thomas, Payton formed the Afro American Real Estate Company. He appealed to black investors, specifically both to their social justice and profit motives, with an ad stating, "Today is the time to buy if you want to be numbered among those of the race who are doing something towards trying to solve the so-called race problem." Uh his claim, "The very prejudice that has heretofore worked against us can be turned and used to our profit." All right. So, and it goes on to say, in 1905, the Hudson Realty Company, a white-owned real estate company, had bought a tract of land on West 135th Street near Lenox Avenue in the heart of Harlem for residential development. To make the development property more attractive to prospective builders, it also bought three neighboring tenement buildings from Afro American Realty, evicted their black tenants, and replaced them with white tenants. Hudson builders agreed to only rent their properties to white. In response, the Afro-American Realty Company bought two adjacent apartment houses, evicted their white tenants, and moved in the black families evicted by Hudson. Eventually, Hudson sold the original three buildings back to the Afro-American at a large loss. The incident augmented Payton's reputation and drew investors to his company. The New York Times called the moves by Hudson and Afro-American Realty a real estate race war. So it goes on to say the Afro-American Realty Company bought a leased property in Harlem neighborhood never until then invaded by black tenants, occasion near panic among neighboring owners. In July of 1906, the New York Herald wrote, an untoward circumstance has been injected into the private dwelling marketing in the vicinity of 133rd and 134th Streets. During the last 3 years, the flats in the 134th between Lenox and 7th Avenues that were occupied entirely by white folks have been captured for occupation by a Negro population. Its present there has tended also to lend much color to conditions in 133rd and 135th Streets between Lenox and 7th Avenues. Okay. 133rd Street still shows some signs of resistance to blending of colors in that street. But between Lenox and 7th Avenues has practically succumbed to the ingress of colored tenants. Nearly all the old dwellings in 134th Street to Midway in the block west from 7th Avenue are occupied by colored tenants, and real estate brokers predict that it is only a matter of time when the entire block to 8th Avenue will be a stronghold of the Negro population. Negroes move into Harlem, New York Herald, December 24th of 1905. So it says white residents were outraged. One sign advertising for colored tenants for a formerly white building was burnt to local acclaim. The Afro-American Realty Company grew to $1 million in assets with annual rent receipts of $114,000. It was not as successful as some stockholders had anticipated, though. And in October 1906, 35 of them brought a lawsuit charging that the prospectus was fraudulent and overstated the company holdings when it was issued. Payton was arrested on civil fraud charges in January 1907, and the courts ruled in favor of the plaintiffs for investment damages and legal costs later that year. The company issued its first and only dividend in June of 1907, but never recovered from the negative publicity effects of the lawsuit and depression of 1907, stopping operation in 1908. So there was a lot of turmoil and issue was going on with the real estate company. All right. So one realty company took over the area where Phillips once owned that whole block and got rid of the tenants, the black tenants. So in return, Phillips decided that he was going to use his real estate company to buy up the area and get rid of the white tenants. So they call it the real estate race war, but at the end, although he became successful, he lost. And it affected his business, and it affected his brand and gave him a negative image, made him look like a fraudulent. So with that being the case, he ended up getting sued, and his business did not go as well, and he wasn't too successful. But let's see what happens afterwards. All right, so let's look at more information. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. So after the Afro-American, Payton continued to buy and manage Harlem real estate for black tenants, founding the Philip A. Payton Jr. Company, known as its PAP logo. He ventured outside the city to Long Island. John E. Nail and Henry G. Parker, former directors of the Afro-American Realty Company, founded their own company, Nail and Parker Real Estate, in 1907. It eventually became one of the most successful in New York. All right, so that's his wife, okay, and that was their home in New York City, and this is him. That's him again, okay, Philip A. Payton Jr. All right, so let's go ahead and continue. And it says by 1914, the Outlook wrote that 3/4 of the black population of New York City, including all blacks prominence, lived in Harlem. It called Payton the father of his Negro community. The success of Payton's enterprise could be seen in the New York neighborhood of 13 West 131st Street. The house he had bought for himself and his wife Maggie in 1903. The entire street was white in 1900. By the time of the 1950 New York State Census, the block was almost completely inhabited by black tenants. Ooh. All right. So Payton closed his large deal in July of 1917, a sale of 6 apartment houses for about $1.5 million, the largest sale of housing for black people to that time. The building were renamed after prominent black figures in the Americas: Crispus Attucks, Toussaint Louverture, Phyllis Whitley, Paul Laurence Dunbar, Frederick Douglass, and Booker T. Washington. The black population in Harlem had reached 50,000 or even 70,000. Payton died of liver cancer a month later at his country house in Allenhurst, New Jersey. He was 41. His younger brother, Edward S. Payton, who had served as vice president of Afro-American Realty, had passed even earlier in 1912 at the age of 30. The Philip A. Payton Jr. Company survived after him, managing numerous African-American apartments at least until 1922. The Philip A. Payton Jr. Company was co-managed by John E. Nail and Henry C. Parker, who went on to be known as the Little Fathers of Negro Harlem. They worked to fulfill Payton's dream of making this Harlem neighborhood a political and cultural capital for African Americans in the area. All right, so if you want to find out more information, here's the references at the bottom of the page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present some other sources. Hold on, shit. What the hell? All right, so hopefully you guys can see this picture. All right. try to see if I can zoom it up a little bit. All right, so as you can see, this is the advertisement from Philip A. Payton Jr. Company. Shout out to the brother True Storian for sending me this information. It says elevator apartments, reasonable rental. The Payton Apartments Corporation. And pleased to announce that, in taking over the Payton Apartments, number one, I can't read that, number one, 117, 127, 137, West 141st Street, and 130 to 140 and 148 West 142nd Street. They are prepared to offer the most modern and desirable apartments that have ever been offered to the respectable renting colored public of New York City at the reasonable rental. All right, so this was his advertisement right here. All right. Now, going down, it says a proper idea of the magnitude of this operation can only be had by taking into consideration the fact that these 6 houses cover a tract of over 2 acres or 33 full city. I can't even see that part. They marked the last word in high class. What's it? Fireproof apartment house construction, beautiful interests, luxurious foyers, and spacious. I can't even read that last part. Give these houses an air of refinement that is appealing. Oh, spacious court. Okay. It says every room in the houses is private and filled with beautiful gas and electrical fixture. Okay. So this was the advertisement back in the 1900s. Okay. And it says Payton Apartments Corporation, E.C. Brown, President, Philip A. Payton Jr. Company agents, office on premises 127 West 141st Street. Okay. All right, then. Oh, and down here it says we have arranged a scale of moderate rentals that should appeal to those who wish comfort and elegance without extravagance. Extravagance. All right. So that's that. Yeah, that's the advertisement. I want to show you guys the video real fast, but let me show you another article that you can look up. So here's an article right here on the website called HarlemWorldMagazine.com. Okay. And this was written on February 26, 2018 by Carolyn. Philip A. Payton Jr., Harlem real estate visionary. All right. And it says that, let's see what else they're talking about here in this article. All right, so here's another advertisement. The pride of the Negro race is the $500,000 Afro-American Realty Company. Capital stock $500,000. The share is $10 each per value. Okay, and the rest is in very fine print. Okay. So see, so basically you can come on here, you can find the information. All right. So it's pretty much saying the same thing that I was reading from Wiki One. So I don't have to read it again, but here it is. All right. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play the video. All right, so I'm gonna play the video that was done by the brothers from NBK, which is New Black Knowledge. You can check out their channel on YouTube. Check out New Black Knowledge channel. Shout out to those brothers. So they pretty much live within the Harlem area. So they from Brooklyn, Harlem, New York area, and they have took the trip to Manhattan to show the location where Philip A. Payton Jr. business, real estate business was, and like the areas that he occupied, etc. So I'm gonna play the video. All right. All right. All right, so I'm getting ready to play the video by MBK dealing with Black history and uh, Philip A. Payton Jr. and the Afro American Realty Company. So they was going to take a walk through Harlem and show the areas where he occupied his business and the properties that he owned, etc. So, all right, let me go ahead and play this video.
This MBK moment is brought to you in honor of Black History Month. It only takes a second to know your history. That that it only takes to know your history that could last life. Real quick, somebody start the clock. Let's go. So, Black folks did not always live in Harlem as you may perceive and think. There was a migration that took place. The story of Black people in New York City in particular, just like the story of white folks in particular, is the migration up the island. Initially, when the European, Dutch in this instance, come, it is the early 1600s, and they live what is downtown Manhattan or in the Wall Street area. For you to get an idea, they began to migrate through the course of the years up the island to live in various places. Uptown, as people know it, was once farmland for rich people, first given to rich merchants, and then peace and that. I gotta just get this off real quick. Timing, because I got a conference call at 10 a.m. Synab, so let me know when it's 10 a.m. I gotta shut it down. So anyway, yeah, so there's a migration up the island. So what happens in the instance of black folks is the same thing. I'm not going to go into all the detail now, but some of the places that we live, starting in the 1640s, when some of us are free, it's called the land of the blacks. That is in Greenwich Village. That area through the 17, 1800s, because other black folks have started living in the area. Other black folks started living in the area. It was called Little Africa. So then you go to uh, the Tenderloin, which is in the 16s or whatever. My batteries are gonna die, so I'll make this even quicker. We get up to Harlem in the early 1900s. Why? Due to the work of one person. His name was Philip A. Payton. You need to look him up. He had a company called the Afro American Realty Company. And what he did was saw that they were charging black folks higher rents in most of these places. So he got together with a group and started buying buildings. And what he did, he got his hustle on, basically saying, if you didn't sell me the building, I'm going to remove one or two black residents on the block. And then, of course, the white folks in their way did not want to live with him. This begins around two blocks in particular, 134th in Manhattan. And you can see this. Some of the blocks that he had are gone, now giving way to what people know as Lenox Terrace. You may have seen that from the Godfather and Harlem movie. Those streets, those are actually streets that went there and went through. So what happens is Philip Payton, battery's about to die, we gotta make this quick, comes up to 134th Street, and he starts to purchase the tenement buildings. And one at a time, black folks start to come up from somewhere where we were called San Juan Hill, which is down more downtown Manhattan. And this begins the settlement of black folks in Harlem in mass numbers due to the efforts of the father of Harlem, once again, before my phone dies, named Philip A. Payton. All right. So when you come to New York as well, it's that block which is gone. It used to go all the way through, and this block, so you can see, is one block. You'll see, in these type of tenements, so you can get the idea. Most of the buildings that he in particular bought are gone now, but you can get an idea of the buildings that you're talking about. This is even a little later, but a tenement building, like more like, so the name, Black History Month people, Philip A. Payton, Afro American Realty Company, and you understand history start coming up from down south, and then even living in New York. In the beginning, he bought buildings. This is the type of buildings, tenement buildings, people lived in. But there would be multiple families to dwell in them places, right? Philip A. Payton is the name. 134 is the block that starts it all, and then it goes to 132nd, becomes another block. This is how it happens, y'all. It doesn't happen when we just come and spring into Harlem. It's through the efforts of Philip A. Payton. Once again, this is what we need to know. This is the person for Black History Month that you're getting for today. And it also deals with housing and how we're living and how we came together to form community and the organizations that go along with that. Um, yeah, so that's what you get. And then some of the well off come and they buy homes like this, but they actually have the whole thing. So what happens as the markets start to go down, the Europeans who own them, these aren't single family homes, where a lot of times the help will live up there, or they would be in a garden apartment in the back. And so they begin now to break up the homes, and these become multiple family dwellings. And then eventually, y'all come up here in mass numbers, and y'all start controlling the strip and putting your businesses, and Harlem begins to form. Didn't happen by just coincidence. And by the way, Mary McLeod Bethune lived on this block. Here's the sign to prove it. So this little Black history lesson, real quick, was brought to you in honor of Philip A. Payton, the man, Alan Brown. I just saw you in the chat who made Harlem happen. Alan Brown knows all about Philip A. Payton and the Afro-American Realty Company. And everyone else needs to Google him immediately if you didn't know prior to this about Philip A. Payton. Now, we done been from Brooklyn or Harlem. Hey, we might show up in Queens or Staten Island, Allen, at some point. So be on the lookout for MBK and discover your history right here. You don't need a plane ticket for 5,000 miles away. Go outside your door. Your Black history today. I like that. I just made that little poetic justice rhyme up real quick. Next time, we may even get into, got to drag Alan Brown up here so he can get into, we're going to go a whole thing on physical culture. This is your homework for next time. Physical culture, because that deals with sports and how we get into athleticism, and then you'll understand why. I tell you, this little single building holds so much of your history. Crazy part is, I hope my battery dies before I can even get it out. This is also where your Harlem History Club starts and all that jazz, right in that building. That's where the history began, along with athletics, sports, basketball, many of the organizations. The man who wrote the Black National Anthem lived in the Y, because the Y used to be right here, and people lived in here, and then they opened it up and moved it across the street. You see? James Weldon Johnson. Actually, here goes one for you. Malcolm X lived in this building right here. When Malcolm X, as you're hearing about now, when he was young, you know what's going on. This is where Malcolm X lived. So, okay? We're going to get Alan Brown. We're going to talk about the sports and how that has an impact, how we need to get our asses in shape even today. So bring the history to today. But for right now, Philip A. Payton, look him up right now. If you have children, tell children. If you have friends, tell your friends. Now you got the story of Harlem starts to form. And we'll start coming to Harlem in mass numbers. We were here since the 60s, and mass numbers is not until the early 1900s. And the, hey, good morning, and the Great Migration. All right, with that note, we are, I got a conference call, other meetings, so deuces.
All right, so that's all the information on Philip A. Payton Jr. Shout out to New Black Knowledge. As you can see, that's the video. The brother who was speaking was Brother True Historian, and he was basically showing the area and the location where the business was once taking place, and the real estate properties that was owned by Mr. Payton and the company that he ran. So yeah, so it was right there in Harlem area. And Harlem is still considered as the black town, if you will, but there's a lot of gentrification going on, just like elsewhere. But there's still a lot of black people occupying those areas that make up the majority of those who live in Harlem today. So yes. Anyways, I thank you all for watching the video. I appreciate that. And excuse me for all the sneezing and stuff like that. You know, I'm just getting over this allergy and this sinus that I had for the past couple of days. So yeah, but I thank you all for tuning in. I thank you for subscribing to the channel. Make sure you guys hit the notification bell. Make sure you share the contents on here as well and share the videos. Thank you all for your support. And if you want to support me, there's my Cash App information at the bottom. If you like to support, if you would like to send some donation or whatever, if you want to do that, you can. That's up to you. But till then, I'll reconnect with you guys later. May peace and power be to all of you. And you guys take it easy on yourself, all right? Thank you and have a wonderful day. All right, then.